Good evening. Welcome to News Plus here on Loveworld USA. I'm TGK Andre. Let's take a quick look at the top headline stories this evening. Governor Josh Shapiro and family safe after suspected arson at Pennsylvania governor's mansion. President Trump declared in excellent health following routine checkup. China urges U.S. to scrap tariffs completely as trade war escalates to 145% levy on Chinese imports. Arizona begins removing nearly 50,000 non-citizens from voter rolls following a lawsuit. These and more stories in the news. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were safely evacuated early Sunday morning after a suspected arsonist set fire to the governor's residence in Harrisburg. The fire broke out shortly after the family had concluded celebrations, marking the first night of Passover. Governor Shapiro, widely considered a rising figure within the Democratic Party and a potential 2028 presidential contender, shared details of the incident on social media. Around 2 a.m., police were banging on our door after an arsonist set fire to the residence. Thank God no one was injured and the fire was extinguished, he posted on X, expressing gratitude to first responders for their swift action. State officials have launched an investigation into the fire, which reportedly caused limited damage due to the rapid response by emergency personnel. Authorities have not yet confirmed the identity of the suspect or whether the act was politically motivated. Governor Shapiro's safety team has increased security measures around the mansion and other state buildings as the investigation continues. The incident has sparked concern across the state, with leaders from both parties condemning the act and calling for a thorough probe into the suspected arson. Watch this.
As we put out already, we are conducting an arson investigation, and we're conducting an attempted homicide and aggravated arson investigation. That is the paradigm that we've operated in. A lot of the investigative tasks have focused on the who up until this point. Obviously, we're trying to piece together very early on the exact sequence of events. We were late in coming out here because we were getting rapid information as it was occurring, and I'm pleased to announce that we do have an individual in custody. His name is Cody Balmer, B-A-L-M-E-R, age 38, with a Harrisburg post office address. In terms of the sequence of events, because of the thrust of the investigation concentrating on the who, I want to be very deliberate in my comments as to the how and exactly the time frame. What I do feel confident in saying at this point is that we don't anticipate any charges for conspiracy, but again, I'd reiterate my qualifier that I mentioned earlier, that we are still very much inside the first 24 hours. But at this point, we do not anticipate that. Likewise, the quick action of the members of the governor's detail, not only his immediate family, but some extended family members who were here. You will see from the physical plant behind me how grave the situation was. And when this occurred, I will tell you, again, the exact sequence of events. We will conduct a full review, but I feel very confident in telling you that it occurred over an extremely brief period of time, several minutes. And the quick action of those troopers last night immediately shifted to the safety of the governor and his family and his extended family. So we will certainly take a look and have a full, competent, and thorough investigation, but our hats are off to the quick action of all the first responders, not just within the state police, but as the governor said, Harrisburg Fire Department, who was instrumental in getting here quickly and getting the fire knocked down. We have kept tabs on the governor all day, and we'll continue to do so.
Well, it's good to hear that nobody's in danger, that everybody's safe, especially after something that happened in the wee hours of the morning. According to the report from the police chief, they said that, they knocked on the residence at about 2 a.m., meaning that, people would have been sound asleep in the home at the time. But it's good to hear, according to reports, that nobody suffered any harm and that the whole family is fine. At the end of the day, whether you disagree or you agree with a politician's politics, with somebody like Governor Shapiro, the right course of action, as we've always stated on Loveworld USA, is through peaceful protest and bringing your ideas into the public forum for it to be debated and legislated on, for, or against. It's never to go and violently attack somebody or to violently attack their property or to cause them harm. So, the same way that there was bipartisan condemnation from both sides, that's how you know that this is definitely not the kind of actions, or this is definitely not the kind of way that the country needs to go towards. And the situations like this and the situation with the United Health CEO that makes us, be certain that when we pray, we're praying against these violent works from prospering. Because all it takes is one bad actor, succeeding with one of these acts for either the other side, to now start retaliating, which just leads to more unrest, or for people to follow in that example to see if they can get a similar result, which both things we just don't want. So it's good to hear that the situation ended peacefully. President Donald Trump is in excellent health and fit for the campaign trail, according to a new medical summary released by his physician. The update marks the first formal health report since the attempted assassination at a Pennsylvania rally last year. Dr. Bruce Ehrenwald, Trump's personal physician, confirmed in the report that the 78-year-old has experienced weight loss since his last examination in 2019, when he weighed 243 pounds. While still classified as overweight under the body mass index, he is no longer considered obese. The memo stated that President Trump maintains full range of motion in his joints and muscles, attributing his current condition to an active lifestyle, frequent travel, and regular participation in competitive golf. This report follows a previous statement from former White House physician Ronnie Jackson, who said that Trump's injuries from last July's shooting incident were superficial. As Trump continues to campaign for a return to the White House, he has frequently questioned the mental and physical fitness of his former rival, President Joe Biden, who in contrast decided to undergo and declined to undergo or release results of a cognitive test while in office. Let's take a look.
Sean Barbella says the 78-year-old that 78-year-old Trump is fully fit to execute the duties of commander-in-chief. The doctor released a memo today describing the results of the president's annual physical on Friday. He says an exam of the president's heart, lungs, eyes, hearing, and abdomen were all normal, and part of a comprehensive neurological exam also found no abnormalities.
Well, it's always good to hear that the president, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, is doing well. It's also good to hear from the White House physician Ronnie Jackson that the bullet that was supposed to take his life ended up resulting in only superficial wounds. Truly that is a miracle from God himself indeed. And one could even say that that's a sign, of the sign and to the sign that President Trump is. So it's good to hear, that at his age, with all that he went through in the last year, that the president is alive and well, and he's gone from obese to overweight. All progress is good progress, as long as it's trending in the right direction. China has called on the United States to fully rescind President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariff policy, urging Washington to correct its mistakes and return to a path of mutual respect. The appeal came days after Trump temporarily paused tariffs on many global trade partners for 90 days, while raising tariffs on Chinese imports to 145%, further intensifying the ongoing trade war. In a statement, China's Commerce Ministry described the limited exemptions Trump granted on certain technology products, including smartphones, semiconductors, and computers, as merely a small step. While the move was welcomed by tech companies and consumers concerned about rising costs, Beijing signaled that it was still evaluating the overall impact of the gesture. Despite the easing on some electronics, tensions remain high, with no scheduled talks between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer confirmed there were no immediate plans for direct communication between the leaders, underscoring the fragile state of U.S.-China relations. Since April, the Trump administration has raised tariffs on Chinese goods from an initial 54% to 145%, citing the need to fix structural imbalances in global trade. China has responded with its own escalating tariffs on U.S. imports, now standing at 125%, and has vowed to fight to the end if provoked further. Economists warn that the continued tit-for-tat escalation could disrupt global trade and negatively impact jobs and economic stability in both nations. And seeing the way that these updates have gone about, it's another reminder that the president is using these tariffs to bring people to the table. And China publicly was the #1 country that said that they would not bow. I mean, they would not be moved. They would not tolerate the way that the tariffs were imposed, meaning that again, they're being headstrong and refusing to come to the table. But according to White House reports, as of today, at least 130 countries have come to the negotiating table that tariffs were imposed on, China not being one of them. But it's good to see, again, that it's almost like the president is giving them a taste of what things might be, because the Liberation Day tariffs were in place for a few days, and the markets across the world panicked. I mean, from China to Japan to Malaysia to Europe, a lot of the markets panicked. Giving those leaders, giving the financial heads in those countries something to think about. That if the president actually carried this through for days to weeks to months, how their economies could struggle to regain stability. So that means that probably instead of facing that, they better return to the negotiating table. China didn't necessarily heed that warning the way the other countries did. So even with the removals of the tariffs or the reduction of the tariffs on the electronic goods, which is good news, of course, for the Apples, the Samsungs, the HPs, the Dells, the car manufacturers of the world that, they're exempt from those tariffs. It's not the end-all be-all, because the overall goal is to bring China to the table, because the same way that, China has imposed over 100% tariffs now on the U.S., which is what the U.S. is doing to China, if the U.S. removes their tariffs, it doesn't mean that China's going to remove their tariffs, because China's had their tariffs up for decades. So the same way that Chinese goods flood the United States, I mean, whether those goods are infringing on copyright, whether the goods are counterfeit, I mean, any way that the goods come, the Chinese government doesn't necessarily take steps to prevent, of course, because they want, Chinese goods inside the U.S., which is why they also perform currency manipulation. And if you don't understand what currency manipulation is, you may have read reports that China, the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, has reached record lows in the last few days. That's not a bad thing. China wants their currency to be valued lower, because now that gives more of an opportunity for outside customers, for foreign customers to buy. Because again, like I've said on the show before, the way the economy works is that consumers want to buy more at a low price, and producers want to sell more while producing at a low price. So China already has the producers that sell, and due to the way their labor laws work, they can sell by producing things at a low price. So now they need consumers to come in and buy more items at a low price as well. So they devalue their currency so that you can get more bang for your buck with a stronger currency. But then that still leads you to contributing to China's economy. And of course, that's one of the ways where you can have quantity over quality. Because now by paying less for less quality goods, you're getting in more quantity, which would overshadow somebody making a bigger investment on one item when somebody can get 500 items at lower cost for each item, but they've spent more at the end of the day. So we will keep you updated here on Loveworld USA concerning China and US's trade war, because of course, when these two global superpowers, these economic giants and colossi are going head to head, like two elephants clashing in the safari, the ground definitely trembles. Arizona has begun the process of removing nearly 50,000 suspected non-citizens from its voter rolls, following a legal settlement that will see all 15 counties collaborate with the Department of Homeland Security to verify citizenship status. This move comes after a successful lawsuit brought by America First Legal and local voter Yvonne Cahill, who argued that counties were not complying with Arizona laws requiring proof of citizenship for voting in state and local elections. The settlement requires counties to conduct monthly checks to verify the citizenship of federal-only voters, individuals who register to vote without providing documentation of U.S. citizenship. While a 2013 Supreme Court ruling bars states from demanding documentary proof for federal elections, Arizona law still mandates such documentation for participation in state and local contests. Under the agreement, registrants who are confirmed to be U.S. citizens will be added to the general voter list, granting them full voting rights in all elections. Those found to be non-citizens will have their registrations canceled. The DHS is now assisting counties by providing data for citizenship verification. The AFL praised the outcome, calling it a bold and important step for election integrity. The group emphasized that the process not only removes ineligible voters, but also potentially empowers federal-only voters to gain full voting access once their citizenship is verified. Again, this has been a key process and a key tenet of the Trump administration, and now also the Republican Party ever since Trump took office, to just simply confirm that those who should only be allowed to vote are the people who are only allowed to vote. Simple as that. There's no controversy. It's just establishing clear boundaries that, hey, if you can't vote, we're going to make sure that there's no possible way that there could be an error that would allow you to vote. It's just clarification. Of course, there are already laws about it, but sometimes it seems that those laws hadn't been strong enough or effective enough to prevent non-citizens from still appearing on voter rolls. And if you're a non-citizen and you shouldn't be voting in the first place, then there shouldn't be any controversy about it. So again, it's good to see these states, and of course it's good to see the United States as a whole, via the SAVE Act, shore up their voter registration and their voter and election laws. Because again, elections are one of the ways that America practices democracy. And free and fair elections are one of the most important tools for a free and fair democratic republic, which America is. We will take a break, and when we return, we'll take a look at some of the stories that made the headlines this week. Don't go anywhere.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, American history. It's our Declaration of Economic Independence. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. American steelworkers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. We are finally putting America first. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. More production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart. This will be indeed the golden age of America.
Welcome back. The House of Representatives has passed a major budget resolution, delivering President Donald Trump a significant legislative win and setting the stage for a broad conservative fiscal overhaul. The bill, which passed by a narrow 216 to 214 margin, allows Republicans to use the budget reconciliation process to advance President Trump's tax and spending agenda without needing Democrat support in the Senate. Just two Republicans, Representatives Thomas Massey and Victoria Spartz, opposed the measure, while no Democrats backed it. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune confirmed the GOP's commitment to at least $1.5 trillion in spending cuts, with added funding planned for defense, border security, and tax relief for tipped and overtime wages. A key goal of the plan is to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts, many of which are set to expire at the end of the year. The bill also enables movement on eliminating Biden-era green energy spending and reducing the national debt, now surpassing $36 trillion. The vote followed a tense night of negotiations between GOP leaders and fiscal conservatives, with holdouts eventually swayed by public endorsements from Speaker Johnson, President Trump, and Leader Thune. Some lawmakers voiced frustration over the handling of talks, but ultimately backed the plan after securing commitments to specific fiscal goals. Conservative lawmakers hailed the outcome as a step toward restoring financial discipline in Washington. With the House and Senate versions of the plan still requiring alignment, Republicans face a tight deadline. The debt ceiling must be raised by midsummer to prevent a federal default, and Trump's tax cuts will lapse without legislative action. GOP leaders say they are prepared to move quickly, aiming to finalize reconciliation, legislation, and deliver a policy overhaul ahead of the 2026 midterms. Let's take a look.
It was a good day in the House, and I told you not to doubt us. The media always does, the Democrats always do, but we get the job done, and we're really grateful to have had the big victory on the floor just now. It was a big one, a very important one. We passed the budget resolution. We adopted the Senate's amendments to the resolution, holding in place all of the commitments and the instructions, the guidelines that the House originally enacted. And that was a big step, because that will allow us now to move forward, to have our committees actually drafting the one big beautiful bill. We're talking about ensuring that the border is secure, having the resources that are necessary to do that. We're talking about getting the American economy going again by reducing regulations. We're talking about restoring peace through strength and making sure we have the measures in place to properly fund those priorities. We have a lot of things, American energy dominance, all the components that will make things better for Americans, drive down the cost of living, and get our economy really going again.
So I want to take some time to explain what the budget reconciliation process is. So the tool that the Republicans used is that a budget reconciliation means that instead of them bringing out a new bill, so this is fresh, it's authored in 2025, they took existing tax cuts and existing budget that President Trump had from 2017 that was set to expire at the end of the fiscal year 2025. And they continued on that. So that allowed them to bypass certain legislative structure in the Congress. And instead of them now pushing a new bill, they're just continuing parts of the old bill and adding some things on top of that didn't get finished. So one can even say that it was like President Trump during his first term, which was in 2017, had the foresight to know that somehow he would be back in 8 years to continue his earlier budget resolution and his earlier tax cuts that he wanted, which of course include no taxes on tips and overtime pay. So that was how the Republicans managed, without of course any Democratic support at all, to push the budget resolution through a reconciliation process. So it's like, instead of, if you have two classes and you have two essays doing those classes, instead of writing two papers, you write one paper for one class. And of course, any students watching at home, I'm not advising you to do this, but this is kind of what the Congress did. You write one paper, you turn it in, then you take a second paper, then you take that same first paper, and now for the second class, you're going to rewrite it a bit, maybe add a page or two, and you turn it in. It's the same content, you're just extending the paper, of course, to apply at a different time for a different class, which is kind of the same maneuver that the Republicans took. So kudos to them for having the wherewithal to use that tool to pass the budget reconciliation through. A former Facebook executive turned whistleblower has accused Meta of compromising U.S. national security in pursuit of an $18 billion business in China. Speaking before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Wednesday, Sarah Wynne Williams, who served as Meta's global public policy director, alleged the company secretly collaborated with the Chinese Communist Party, including granting access to user data, potentially including Americans' information, and building censorship tools to suppress dissident voices. Wynne Williams claimed Meta executives complied with CCP demands, such as deleting the Facebook account of Guo Wenyi, a prominent Chinese dissident living in the US. She testified that Meta's leadership prioritized access to the Chinese market over democratic values, saying the company worked hand in glove with Beijing. Meta denied the allegations, asserting that the company does not operate services in China, although it continues to generate significant advertising revenue from Chinese clients. The company also said the removal of Guo's page was due to community standards violations. The hearing, led by Senator Josh Hawley, highlighted Meta's aggressive legal actions against Wynne Williams, including threats of $50,000 penalties for each public mention of the company in violation of a non-disparagement agreement she signed in 2017. Hawley criticized the company for attempting to silence the whistleblower, comparing her testimony to previous revelations from Frances Haugen and Arturo Bejar. Meta insisted Wynne Williams was not restricted from testifying before Congress, but did not directly confirm whether it would pursue penalties for her statements during the hearing. Wynne Williams, who recently published a memoir titled Careless People, said the experience had taken a severe emotional toll. Even the choice to come and speak to Congress is incredibly difficult, she said. Her claims reignite scrutiny over Meta's global practices, the role of big tech in geopolitics, and the fine line between market expansion and national interest. Watch this.
Meta's dishonesty started with the betrayal of core American values. Mark Zuckerberg pledged himself a free speech champion. Yet I witnessed Meta work hand in glove with the Chinese Communist Party to construct and test custom-built censorship tools that silenced and censored their critics. When Beijing demanded that Facebook delete the account of a prominent Chinese dissident living on American soil, they did it, and then lied to Congress when asked about the incident in a Senate hearing. The willingness to censor was not the only troubling thing I witnessed. I watched as executives decided to provide the Chinese Communist Party with access to Meta user data, including that of Americans. Meta does not dispute these facts. They can't. I have the documents. As recently as this Monday, they claim that they do not operate their services in China. Another lie. In fact, they began offering products and services in China.
Again, this isn't new to Meta. CEO Mark Zuckerberg is on record publicly saying that he caved during the COVID-19 fiasco to pressures from the Biden administration to censor medical misinformation on Facebook's platform. Of course, after Biden left office, he then felt free to come into the public and say how much he opposed doing so, which is why he then decided to switch his political allegiance from leaning more democratically to conservatively. While he did say that publicly and come out and admit his wrongdoing, many accused him of being someone who was swayed, quote unquote, by every wind of doctrine, just going where he could curry favor. But even going past this isn't Meta's first time being careless or insensitive with user data. In 2018, Meta was part of a huge scandal involving Cambridge Analytica and, again, the political elections that had just happened a year or two before, where it was revealed that Cambridge Analytica, a political consultant, was allowed to access around 87 million users' data through a survey that only 270,000 people had taken on Facebook. And in that, they were able to build psychological profiles for political parties to use in getting their advertising and their propaganda out. So again, this is something that Facebook knew about and concealed. Well, Meta now, formerly Facebook, knew about and concealed, proving that they have a track record of playing loose and fast with user data. So it doesn't come as much of a surprise to hear what the whistleblower Wynne Williams is speaking about now. Hopefully, it's not as bad as he says it is, because if it is that serious, and Meta has been willing to trade the data of United States citizens and residents to the Chinese Communist Party in exchange for business favors, then this is a situation more dire than TikTok. Because now what TikTok is being alleged of doing Meta has actually done, and directly hand in hand to the CCP, the ruling government party in China. So hopefully for the sake of everybody on Meta, and that includes Facebook, that includes WhatsApp, and that includes Instagram, which all fall under the Meta umbrella, say it ain't so. The Department of Government Efficiency says it has uncovered staggering levels of fraud in the U.S. unemployment system, revealing that millions in taxpayer dollars were dispersed to non-existent individuals, including people not yet born. In a review of claims since 2020, DOGE identified 9,700 cases involving birth dates set 15 years or more into the future, totaling $69 million in fraudulent payouts. One such claim, dated to the year 2154, received $41,000. DOGE also found over 24,500 claimants aged 115 or older, collecting $59 million, and 28,000 children under age 5, collecting an astonishing $254 million. Musk shared the findings on X, calling them so crazy that I had to read it several times before it sank in. The DOGE revelations come amid broader efforts by the Trump administration to crack down on government waste, with Musk leading the charge to uncover fraud and abuse within federal programs. DOGE's analysis highlights long-standing vulnerabilities in state and federal benefit systems, particularly in how identity verification is handled. The agency is expected to push for stricter oversight, including digital cross-referencing with federal birth and death registries, to prevent such fraudulent payouts in the future. According to Musk, the presence of claimants over 115 years old means they are likely dead, and their ongoing claims signal system failures that have gone unchecked for years. This discovery may fuel renewed political debates about the integrity of the unemployment system and the broader need for technological upgrades in public administration. While the total financial loss from fraudulent claims is still being assessed, DOGE's early findings already indicate hundreds of millions of dollars in waste. The agency has pledged further audits as part of its broader mission to bring efficiency and accountability back to federal spending. Let's take a look.
Unemployment insurance fraud. That trust needs to be whole for the American people. When we need it for who deserves it. That's not what we're seeing in the numbers that we saw last night, again, exposed by our partners at DOGE at the Department of Labor. Since 2020, over $400 million of payments have gone out already. And when you hear these numbers, apparently in the United States, we have over almost 25,000 people who are over 115 years old who are collecting $59 million that we have sent out to people. Talk about fraudulent behavior. Mr. President, 28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old have collected fraudulent payments at the tune of $254 million has gone out. And lastly, 10,000 people who have not been born yet, 15 years into the future, $69 million, and they haven't even been born yet. In one case, they will be born 129 years from now. The United States government sent them $41,000, and they're not born yet. So, under the Department of Labor, those are the things that we're uncovering. I couldn't be more honored to tell the American people that we're bringing back their dollars and we're saving them and returning them to the United States Treasury.
We'll be right back with more news. Be sure to stay tuned.
Soon return has begun, and in this first quarter of the year of completeness, Loveworld USA has indeed been spreading and preaching the gospel of our Lord Jesus, preparing the hearts of billions around the world to expect the Lord.
This year, we will complete the full preaching of the gospel in all nations.
Loveworld USA broadcasted life-changing programs with our man of God. Global Communion Service, Your Loveworld Specials, Global Day of Prayer, Healing Streams. Loveworld News, where we emphasize truth and deception. Truth Watch USA, where Americans are exposed to the truth. Topics such as the failed agenda of so-called globalists, what's really happening to your food, President Trump, a sign to the church, prayer programs where effective prayers were offered, tremendous power, Pray for America, faith-filled programs like I'm Just Saying, Pastor Chris Worth reading, Stick to the Word, programs with Pastor Benny, and many more. We say thank you, dearest partners, for contributing towards our programming and daily operations through your partnership. Loveworld USA is positioned for a massive harvest of souls all around the world as we set our sail to reach more people in this second quarter, in more languages, and change more lives. This is a call to our dearest partners all over the world to join this mandate in completing the full preaching of the gospel to all nations as you sponsor our 2025 projects. 1. Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. Ensure the spread of the message of the man of God through Loveworld USA. The spread of our ministry programs and agenda through satellite, cable, internet, digital, mobile apps, Alpha TV, OTT platforms, our news, and our current affairs. 2. Minutes to Reach Billions 4.0. Make your every minute count for the gospel as we spread the awareness of Loveworld USA to your world. 3. Translation of our language-specific channels. Make it possible for billions around the world to watch our programs in their native language. 4. Tag your name to a program. Sponsor and tag your name to our various Loveworld USA programs. You can adopt a specific program. 5. Studio upgrade. Join us today with your lavish gift to the work of Loveworld USA. Every SPs or dollar you give goes to accomplishing our mandate to fully preach the gospel with our life-transforming content. For more information, please call the number showing on your screen. God bless you.
President Donald Trump warned Thursday that he will impose tariffs and possibly sanctions on Mexico if it fails to deliver water owed to Texas farmers under a 1944 treaty. In a Truth Social post, Trump accused Mexico of stealing 1.3 million acre-feet of water promised to South Texas, blaming the crisis for the closure of the state's last sugar mill and threatening economic consequences until the treaty is honored. Trump praised Senator Ted Cruz for his advocacy and criticized the Biden administration for ignoring the issue, vowing that under his leadership, the U.S. will enforce the agreement. He also pointed to his previous move, halting water shipments to Tijuana, as a sign of his administration's tougher stance. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins is reportedly leading efforts to escalate pressure until Mexico complies. The water dispute, rooted in a nearly 80-year-old treaty, has intensified amid a severe drought. Texas farmers, especially in the Rio Grande Valley, rely heavily on the water to sustain citrus and sugar crops, with the shortage threatening a major blow to the state's $500 million citrus industry. The U.S. recently denied a Mexican request to route Colorado River water to Tijuana in response to ongoing shortfalls. The move, applauded by Cruz and supported by the State Department, signals a turning point in the long-standing dispute with the Trump administration, tying treaty compliance directly to trade relations. Let's take a look.
President Donald Trump is warning Mexico he may impose sanctions and more tariffs on the country if it doesn't give Texas the water he believes is owed. Trump said Mexico owes Texas 1.3 million acre-feet of water under the 1944 Water Treaty. He has halted water shipments to Tijuana until the agreement is met. Trump accused Mexico of stealing water from U.S. farmers in a post on social media. Both Texas and Mexico are suffering from drought conditions. Mexico's President, Claudia Sheinbaum, directed her administration to contact officials from the U.S. Agriculture and State Departments. She added that Mexico has been supplying water as it's been available.
This escalation.
So to put into context how much 1.3 million acre-feet is, the definition of an acre-foot of water is how much water is required to cover an acre a foot deep in water, or a foot high in water. So that's about 325,800 gallons. So now when you multiply that by 1.3 million, of course, 325,800 gallons for each acre, you understand how much water that Mexico is owing Texas. And when we say owing water, when California had their fire, when they had the wildfire issues, they had a water issue, meaning that, of course, there's a clean water reserve that's, reserved for people to drink and to be used for certain processes. And then, of course, there's also, water that's used for agriculture and crops. So Tijuana, Mexico, which is close to Texas, is supposed to deliver that amount yearly as part of a treaty passed in 1944. And then Mexico, whenever it needs would have water delivered from the Colorado River as part of the agreement. But now with Mexico being delinquent on that agreement, the Texas economy is suffering. I mean, Texas literally has a city called Sugarland. And now imagine that the last sugar mill in Texas now has to be closed. There is no Sugarland. It's now only a metaphoric remembrance of a name that once meant something. And of course, with a drought already occurring in South Texas, this delinquency on the delivering of the water is putting a very big stress on the farmers here in the state of Texas. So hopefully the pressure raised by Brooke Rollins, that's the Secretary of that's the Agriculture Secretary, gets somewhere, because it doesn't make sense for something that's gone on, and of course under the Biden administration it was ignored and they were allowed to get away with what they got away with. But it doesn't make sense that something that's been agreed upon for almost 80 years now can just be passed over like it doesn't matter. But it matters to the Texas farmers. So it should matter to the American government, because the Texas farmers pay taxes to America, and the American government is supposed to represent the American people. Human rights organizations, clergy in exile, and U.S. officials are raising urgent concerns over the escalating persecution of the Catholic Church in Nicaragua under President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo. For the second conservative year, Nicaragua has largely banned traditional Lent and Holy Week processions, reflecting what observers describe as one of the world's most severe crackdowns on religious freedom. Over 200 Catholic clergy and religious have been forced into exile, and priests remaining in the country report being under near constant surveillance, with their pastoral activities tightly controlled by government authorities. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, during a February trip to Latin America, condemned the Ortega regime's campaign to silence religious voices, specifically accusing the government of trying to eliminate the church. A recent report by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom described conditions in Nicaragua as abysmal and highlighted abuses such as the deportation of clergy, the suppression of evangelical and indigenous church leaders, and attacks on religious sanctuaries. The regime has canceled the legal status of most religious institutions and expelled all Catholic nuns from the country. Despite ongoing repression, including arrest, deportation, and bans on key religious observances, the Catholic faithful in Nicaragua continue to worship, often in secret. Out of the 9 senior bishops in Nicaragua, 4 are now in exile. Bishop Rolando Alvarez, after spending over a year in prison, was released in 2024 through Vatican negotiations and exiled to Rome. There's one thing that the man of God, Pastor Chris, said, which is that although we might not be Roman Catholic, we are all Catholic, under the definition of what the word Catholic in Catholicism means. So, although we may not have the same traditions as the Catholic Church, it doesn't mean that we just look away as believers of the faith away from the Catholic Church. So it's a situation now where we have to understand, that these are signs. If you watched the promo earlier, you know that we are in the countdown. The countdown has begun to the soon coming arrival of our Master, the Lord Jesus Christ. And these are the signs that the Bible prophesied would happen. The persecution of the church is ramping up because the Antichrist is trying to take time ahead of his time. But we know that as we pray through programs like Unending Praise, as we listen and remain educated through programs like your Loveworld Specials with Pastor Chris, because the Bible does say that God's people perish for their lack of knowledge, that we remain with knowledge, we remain in prayer, and we use praise. And we will ensure that until day that letteth be removed, which is the church, we continue to exercise power. And when we leave, it shall be in a triumphant victory procession, continuing on to our perpetual victory parade with the Lord and Savior at the helm, not escaping from the persecutions of this world. And now, let's take a look at the weather update. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. Governor Josh Shapiro and family safe after suspected arson in Pennsylvania governor's mansion. President Trump declared in excellent health following routine checkup. China urges U.S. to scrap tariffs completely as trade war escalates to 145% levy on Chinese imports. Arizona begins removing nearly 50,000 non-citizen voters from rolls following lawsuit. And that's News Plus for today. Remember to join the same time tomorrow for more. I'm TGK Andre. Good night and God bless you.